Brick by brick, this mansion was built to keep the living out and the dead in. Within its walls, secrets breathe and shadows speak. Welcome to Haunted Mansion Stories. Every mansion has secrets. This one whispers them in the dark. Listen to the secrets only if you dare.
I wasn't supposed to find that website. It didn't show up on any normal search engine. No links from Reddit, no suggestions on social media. It just appeared. Like the internet itself had slipped me a note it wasn't meant to. The page was old, designed in blocky HTML with pixelated skulls decorating the borders. At the top, in jagged red letters, it read, "The creepy voodoo doll, how to make and use one. Do not continue unless you are ready for consequences." At first, I thought it was just some Halloween craft joke. But the deeper I scrolled, the stranger it got. The list of supplies seemed normal enough: torn cloth, candle wax, twine, a needle. But then came the final ingredient, something personal from the victim. A lock of hair, a nail clipping, a drop of blood. And beneath that, the rules. Rule 1. Do not make the doll in your own image. Rule 2. Never use your own blood to seal it. Rule 3. Once the doll moves, do not look away until the ritual is complete. Fake. It had to be fake. And yet, something about the page held me there like invisible hands pressing on my shoulders. I should have closed the tab. I should have deleted my history and gone to bed. But I didn't. I chose my neighbor, Mrs. Callahan. Bitter old woman. She hated everyone on the block, but she hated me the most. She left notes on my door about my disgraceful trash bins, reported my dog for barking, and once threatened to poison him. So I followed the instructions. Cloth stuffed with cotton, stitched into a crude figure with twine wrapped tight around its waist. Candle wax hardened over its seams like veins. The last step required something personal. That morning, she'd left her sweater on the laundry line. I plucked a single wiry grey hair from the fabric. It was enough. The page said to prick the needle and seal it. I panicked. My own blood wasn't allowed. Instead, I dabbed the tip with a dried speck of blood from my dog's paw, left from an old scrape. And then I tied the final knot. That's when the air went still. Not quiet, still. Like the house itself was holding its breath. The doll twitched. At first, I thought it was my imagination. But then the stitched arm jerked twice, and its head lolled to the side as if listening. I remembered Rule 3, don't look away. My eyes burned, but I couldn't blink. I swear the stitched face shifted, the wax forming into something like a smile. I whispered Mrs. Callahan's name. The doll tilted its head. On impulse, I pinched its leg between my fingers. A scream tore through the night. Real. Shrill. From the other side of the wall. Mrs. Callahan's voice. I dropped the doll. My hands shook violently. I wanted to undo it, to reverse whatever I'd done, but the instructions hadn't mentioned reversal. Only binding. The doll lay still for a long time. Until I noticed it wasn't in the same position I'd left it. It was closer. 3 nights I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk with a candle burning, eyes locked on the doll as it twitched and jerked in unnatural movements. Sometimes I swore it whispered, though the sound was more like static pressed against my skull. On the 4th night, the sirens came. I saw flashing lights outside my window. Mrs. Callahan was carried out on a stretcher, her body twisted in unnatural angles. She didn't survive. I hadn't touched the doll that night. When I looked back at it, its stitched face was turned away from me, as if hiding a secret. I checked the website again. The heading had changed. Congratulations. You have completed the ritual. The doll is yours now. And beneath it, in faint letters that I swear hadn't been there before. Rule 4. Once you've made a doll, it will always make another. That's when I saw it. On my desk, beside the first doll, lay a second one. Smaller. Rougher. This one had strands of black hair. My hair. When I first saw it, I thought maybe I'd been awake too long. Hallucinations, I told myself. Sleep deprivation. A trick of the candlelight. But no, when I leaned closer, the truth set in like ice in my stomach. The second doll was real. It was smaller than the first, stitched from the same dirty cloth and twine, but I hadn't made it. The seams were crooked, sloppy, and yet unmistakably deliberate. Strands of black hair had been woven into its scalp. My hair. The worst part. It had a mouth. I never sewed one. But this doll's mouth was wide and jagged, as though the wax itself had carved open a grin. I tried ignoring it. Stupid, I know. I pushed the second doll into a drawer and told myself I'd burn both of them when daylight came. But before dawn, I woke to the sharp sting of a needle. I shot upright in bed, clutching my arm. A thin red line stretched across my skin, fresh and bleeding. The drawer where I'd hidden the doll was open. The second doll lay on top of my desk now, its wax grin glistening in the candlelight. A pin was stuck deep in its arm, the same arm that now burned on my body. I panicked. I grabbed the doll and hurled it against the wall, desperate to break it. But it didn't burst. It laughed. Not loudly, just a faint hiss, like air escaping a punctured lung. When I looked back, the first doll, the one tied to Mrs. Callahan, was standing upright on my desk. Its stitched body swayed on legs that shouldn't have been able to hold weight. And something clicked inside my head. The dolls weren't just objects. They weren't just conduits. They were watching me. Learning me. The next morning, I looked in the bathroom mirror. My reflection was wrong. My eyes were bloodshot, yes, but that wasn't it. The corner of my mouth seemed stretched. My skin had faint lines where stitches might have been. I blinked hard. Rubbed my eyes. The reflection snapped back to normal. But when I glanced at the second doll later, I noticed its seams were tighter, its form more refined. It looked more and more like me every time I turned my back. That night, I woke to the sensation of something crawling across my chest. My hand shot out and touched twine. A length of black thread was wrapped around me like a noose, tightening slowly. I tore it off, heart racing, and followed it across the room. It led back to the second doll, its stitched hands still clutching the other end. I screamed, shoving it into the fireplace. Flames licked the cloth, the wax bubbled until the fire went out. Not faded. Not sputtered. Snuffed, like invisible fingers pinched it closed. The doll lay there untouched, grinning up at me. The body knows. I'm starting to understand now. The second doll isn't just bound to me. It is me. Every injury it receives, I feel. Every change it makes, I become. Last night, I woke with stitches in my arm. Real stitches, black thread sewn through my flesh in crooked loops. My skin was sealed like fabric, puckered and ugly. I didn't sew them. The doll did. The worst part is that I went back to the website, desperate, and scrolled past the rules again and again. At the very bottom of the page, in text so faint it looked like scratches on the screen, I found something new. It said, "The first doll binds to your victim. The second doll binds to you. When both are complete, the third doll awakens." There wasn't any picture. No explanation of what the third doll was. But when I turned around, my desk was empty. Both dolls were gone. I didn't sleep after the dolls vanished. I kept every light in the house on, searching through closets, under the bed, even in the attic. But they weren't anywhere. The silence in the rooms felt wrong, too heavy, as if the dolls were watching me from a place I couldn't see. I went back to the website again. And this time, there were more pages. Not links. Not menus. Just more. The site grew. At the bottom of the ritual page, beneath the faint writing about the third doll, a new button had appeared, Read the Testimonies. Clicking it brought me to a list of usernames. Old, forgotten handles that looked like they came from forums in the early 2000s. Each one had a message. Most were short. Some were frantic. A few were unfinished, as if the writer had been interrupted. Don't make the second doll. Don't. It doesn't stop at 3. Nobody warned me. The collector doesn't just take their souls. He harvests the bodies, too. And one that froze me in place. If you see your doll move on its own, it's already too late. You've been chosen for the collector. I tried clicking the usernames for more info, but every one redirected to the same page. A crude drawing. It was a figure, faceless, with long hands that ended in dangling strings. Like a puppeteer. That night, I dreamed of him. I stood in a room filled with shelves that stretched into the dark, each lined with dolls. Thousands of them. Their button eyes stared blankly, mouths sewn shut, bodies slumped like forgotten toys. And then, movement. The dolls began twitching, jerking, their strings pulling tight as if they were marionettes controlled by something above. I craned my head back, and there he was. The collector. No face, no features. Just a black silhouette with strings for fingers, reaching down into the endless rows of dolls. When his hand lowered toward me, I felt the strings digging into my skin, thread piercing my veins, tugging, pulling. I woke up screaming. By morning, I was desperate. I started searching old forums, the kind buried on archive sites. Hours later, I found one. A thread titled, "The Dollmaker's Curse Anyone Else?" The posts dated back over a decade. Some users swapped stories about finding the same website. Others argued it was a hoax. But sprinkled between them were messages that sounded too real. One user, ThreadbareSoul89, had posted over and over again, warning others to stop. His last post read, "If you've made it to the second doll, leave your house. Don't sleep. Don't eat. Run. The collector only comes for those who finish the ritual. He doesn't need you to make the third doll. He makes it for you." The account never posted again. That night, I heard it. A faint scraping sound in my bedroom. Not scratching. Not footsteps. Something dragging. When I turned on the light, both dolls were back on my desk. But they weren't alone. A third doll stood between them. Taller. Stitched from darker cloth, its seams glowing faintly red as though lit from within. Its arms were outstretched, and from its hands dangled thin, black strings. One was tied to Mrs. Callahan's doll. One was tied to mine. And the rest. They were trailing toward my bed. I couldn't stay in my house anymore. The dolls were multiplying. Every morning, there were more. On the dresser. On the kitchen counter. In the hallway. Some were unfinished, faceless, headless, half-stitched and stuffed with straw, but each carried something of mine. A button from my shirt. A thread from my bedsheets. A strand of hair that I knew I hadn't left out. It was like they were harvesting me. Piece by piece. The worst part was that I never saw them appear. I'd fall asleep with one or two on my desk and wake to a dozen staring at me from every corner of the room. Their blank button eyes didn't just watch, they waited. I packed a bag and left. I didn't even lock the door. What good would that do against something that could crawl out of shadows? I couldn't shake what I'd read in that forum thread. The curse began with the dollmaker. If you want answers, find her house. The post had an address attached. Rural Louisiana. A plantation long abandoned, swallowed by swamp and folklore. It sounded insane. A horror cliché. But what else could I do? Running hadn't helped. The dolls followed. I could feel them even now, like unseen hands tugging at my clothes as I drove. Maybe if I found the source, I could end it. The closer I got, the less the GPS made sense. Roads turned to dirt paths, then to tracks half buried under swamp water and vines. Spanish moss draped from skeletal trees, reaching down like fingers. I had to abandon the car a mile out and continue on foot. By the time I saw it, I already knew I'd found the place. The plantation rose from the mist like a corpse crawling out of a grave. 3 stories tall, its timbers blackened with rot, shutters hanging like broken teeth. The porch sagged inward, every board slick with mildew. Windows gaped like blind eyes. It should have been collapsing. But it wasn't. Somehow, it endured. Inside, the air was heavy. Sweet and rancid at the same time, like flowers rotting in summer heat. My flashlight beam sliced across wallpaper that had bubbled and peeled, revealing dark stains beneath. I expected emptiness. Cobwebs. Dust. Silence. But the house was full. They covered the walls. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Each was nailed into place, arms outstretched as if crucified. Some were small and crude, others intricate, stitched with care, detailed enough to almost look alive. Their button eyes reflected the beam of my flashlight, filling the hall with hundreds of pinpricks of light. Beneath every doll was a name, scrawled in black ink that had faded to brown. I moved closer. My breath caught. Mrs. Callahan. Threadbare Soul 89. And others, names from the testimonies I'd read online, people who had posted warnings before their accounts went silent. The flashlight shook in my hand as I scanned the wall. And then I froze. At the very end, near the staircase, was an empty space. A single nail already hammered into place. Beneath it, written in fresh, wet black ink, was my name. I should have left then. Run. But something pulled me deeper. The stairs groaned under my weight as I climbed. The second floor was worse, dolls hanging from the ceiling by strings, swinging gently as if stirred by breath that wasn't mine. Their button eyes followed me. I swear I heard some of them clicking their jaws, like teeth grinding. At the end of the third-floor hall was a single door, painted red. Unlike the rest of the house, the paint was fresh, bright, almost wet-looking. My hand shook as I turned the knob. The smell hit me first. Wax. Herbs. Burnt iron. The room was cleaner than the rest of the house, preserved as if someone still lived here. At the center was a wooden chair, and around it, a circle of dolls. They weren't nailed to the walls. They weren't hanging. They were sitting upright, facing inward, as if waiting for something. On the chair was a book. Its leather cover was pale. Too pale. When I touched it, my stomach turned. It wasn't cowhide. It was soft. Like skin. The pages were brittle, yellowed, covered in cramped handwriting. Instructions filled them. Rituals. How to make dolls for protection. For luck. For revenge. For resurrection. Every step laid out in disturbing detail, materials, incantations, sacrifices. But every single ritual ended the same way. Once the doll awakens, the collector decides the fate. The collector. The faceless puppeteer from my dreams. I slammed the book shut, heart pounding. The whisper. The air thickened. My flashlight flickered. And then I heard it. A voice. Thin as thread. Hissing through the walls. You've come home. I spun toward the door. She was standing there. A woman, or what was left of one. Her skin sagged, yellow-grey like old parchment. Her eyes were clouded white, blind yet piercing. And her lips were sewn shut with black thread, pulled so tight they had split the corners of her mouth. Yet her voice filled my head. I made the first. You made the last. The circle is complete. Her stitched mouth tore wider into a grotesque smile, thread snapping and leaking black fluid down her chin. The dolls around the room turned their heads toward me, every single one of them, their button eyes gleaming in unison. I don't remember running. Don't remember bursting through the front door. All I remember is the sound. Hundreds of tiny feet pattering across the wood behind me. Dolls scurrying, crawling, their limbs jerking unnaturally fast. I didn't stop until I reached the road. My chest burned, my lungs screamed, but I didn't dare look back. When I finally did, the house was gone. No ruins. No plantation. Just swamp. Trees. Mist. But when I stumbled to my car, gasping, I saw it waiting on the hood. A doll. New. Perfectly stitched. Its button eyes gleamed in the moonlight. And its face was exactly mine. The wax mouth stretched wide into a smile. And when I blinked, I swear I saw it move. I didn't go home after the plantation. I couldn't. Every mile I drove, I expected to see the dolls again lined up along the roadside, waiting in the ditch, pressed against my windows. But the road was empty. Too empty. Like even the world itself had gone silent. When I finally stopped at a motel off the interstate, the woman at the front desk barely looked up. She didn't ask for ID. She didn't ask for money. She just handed me a key, her eyes glassy, fixed on something over my shoulder. I didn't turn to see what it was. The room smelled of mold and cigarette smoke, but it was safe, or so I thought. I set my bag down, sat on the bed, and tried to breathe. And that's when I saw it. On the nightstand. The doll. The one that looked exactly like me. Its button eyes glinted in the flickering light. Its stitched arms were bent at unnatural angles, as if it had been placed there deliberately. I hadn't brought it with me. I tried to throw it out. I left it in the parking lot, stomped on it, even tried to tear it apart with my hands. But every time I walked back into the room, it was waiting on the nightstand. Closer. Straighter. More like me. By morning, my reflection was wrong again. The stitches I'd noticed before had spread. Black thread stretched across my chest now, across my ribs, sewn into my skin as if I'd been pieced together after being taken apart. The seams pulled when I moved. When I tried to cut them open, blood didn't come out, only wax. And beneath it, I swore I saw stuffing. Cotton. Straw. I wasn't just cursed. I was being replaced. That night, the dream came again. The shelves. The dolls. The endless rows staring blankly into the void. But this time, I wasn't just looking at them. I was among them. I couldn't move. Couldn't scream. Could only watch as the collector stepped closer. His faceless head loomed above me, strings dangling from his fingers like veins. He reached down, and I felt the pull. Threads slid under my skin, threading through my muscles, tugging me upright like a marionette. My limbs jerked unnaturally, obeying a rhythm that wasn't mine. And in that moment, I understood. The dolls weren't vessels. They weren't tools. They were us. Every victim who made one. Every soul who played the game. Bound, stitched, shelved. The collector wasn't building an army. He was building a collection. When I woke, the book was on the motel bed beside me. The same one I had seen in the dollmaker's house. The skin cover warm to the touch, pulsing faintly like it was alive. It fell open on its own, pages flipping until it stopped near the end. The words burned themselves into my vision. Once you have given enough pieces of yourself, the doll will be finished. When the last stitch is made, you will take its place. I dropped the book, but the words didn't fade. They were etched into my mind like scars. I don't know how long I've been here. Hours. Days. The dolls don't let me leave anymore. The one on the nightstand sits closer now, upright, perfect. Its face is mine. Its body is whole. Its seams are finished. Mine are not. I feel the thread moving under my skin as I write this. Crawling. Pulling tight. One last stitch, and I'll be done. When that happens, the doll will rise, take my place, and walk out of this room with my face, my voice, my life. No one will ever know I'm gone. I'll just be another name on the wall. Another doll on the shelf. Another string in the collector's hands. And if you're reading this, if you've ever found that website, don't make one. Don't even try. Because once the first stitch is tied, you're already his. I don't remember falling asleep. Maybe I never did. The motel room dissolved around me like melting wax, and suddenly I was back in the hall of shelves. The collector's domain. Only this time, the shelves weren't filled with dolls. They were filled with people. Hundreds of them. Their eyes button black, their mouths stitched into silence. Standing rigid, swaying as if pulled by strings I couldn't see. Some of them looked familiar, faces I'd glimpsed online, people from news articles about disappearances, even children whose photos had once been on milk cartons. And then I saw me. A perfect version of myself, standing at the far end of the aisle. It seems flawless, its eyes unblinking. It turned its head toward me and smiled. I had never heard him speak before. His voice wasn't sound. It was pressure, crawling through my skull, bending my thoughts to match his rhythm.
You are the last stitch.
The words rattled through me like nails on glass. I wanted to scream, to deny it, but when I looked down at my hands, they weren't my hands anymore. Wax dripped from the cracks in my skin. Thread was laced through my fingers, binding me tighter with every movement. The collector loomed closer, faceless but infinite. His hands dangled strings that weren't attached to anyone yet. And I understood. I wasn't just becoming a doll. I was becoming his instrument. I woke in the motel bed to the sound of someone breathing. Not me. Across the room, sitting calmly in the chair, was my double. My doll. My replacement. It blinked. It smiled. And then, in my voice, it said, "I'll take care of everything. They won't even miss you." I lunged at it, but my legs buckled. The stitches down my thighs ripped open, and stuffing spilled onto the carpet. I clawed at the seams, desperate to hold myself together, but the doll only watched, amused. It stood, straightened its shirt, and walked toward the door. I couldn't stop it. The last thing I heard before it left was the jingle of keys, my keys, as the door shut behind it. The walls of the motel peeled away, and I was back on the shelf. I couldn't move. Couldn't scream. Couldn't even cry. The collector placed me between two others, a girl with braids and a man in a baseball cap. Their button eyes stared ahead, unblinking. We swayed together in silence, bound by invisible strings, waiting for the next edition. And somewhere, out there, my replacement was walking free in my skin. Warning. If you're hearing this, if you found these words, I need you to understand. The dolls don't kill you. They replace you. Your family, your friends, your entire life taken by something that looks like you, sounds like you, but isn't. And you'll be left here. On the shelf. Forever. The collector doesn't want the world. He doesn't need armies or worship. He only wants to fill the shelves. And there's always room for one more.
Leave now, but beware. The mansion remembers those who enter, and it will call you back. You've walked the halls, heard the voices, and felt the chill. The story ends for now, but don't forget to like and subscribe because the mansion waits. Always.